single dad's disabled son was carried into the hospital by a powerful CEO who owned half the city. Yet his eyes looked more broken than any poor man on the street. The boy's weak voice cut through the cold silence of the luxury lobby, and everyone froze. Billionaires, doctors, even strangers standing nearby. No one expected a child to ask something so heartbreaking. The father, a man known for power and control, stood helpless, begging for kindness that money could not buy. Then a nurse stepped forward, her eyes steady, her touch calm, offering the boy more hope than all the wealth in the world. But behind that gentle smile, she carried a past so heavy that it could shatter everything. And in that moment, the story of love, betrayal, and a soul-stirring secret began. Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit subscribe button and like the video, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. Morning light spilled over Manhattan like a sheet of gold. In a glass tower above the traffic and sirens, Michael stood at a window and watched the city he ruled. He was a billionaire, a CEO who signed deals that changed skylines. Today, he wore a blue suit and the expression of a man who had not slept. He pressed his hand against the glass as if he could push away the fear sitting in his chest. Across the room, Ethan waited in a wheelchair. The boy's sneakers were new, but scuffed at the toes. A backpack with a rocket patch hung on the chair. Ethan's legs were thin, one foot tilted inward. He rubbed the zipper pull like a lucky charm and tried to smile. "Breakfast?" Michael asked, turning from the view. "Toast," Ethan said. "And the strawberry jam, the good one." Michael laughed softly. "Of course, the good one." He crossed the open-plan living room, larger than most houses, past a white piano that no one played and a wall of family photos that had never been hung. Artwork worth a small fortune leaned against a hallway. A millionaire's home, a billionaire's perch, and yet the room felt empty. Ethan's mother had left when he was very young. Some days the silence was a relief. Today it felt like a weight. In the kitchen, a private chef offered eggs and salmon. Michael shook his head. "Just toast." The chef nodded and vanished like a well-trained ghost. When they sat at the Marble Island, Ethan spoke in a hush. "Dad, do I have to go to the hospital again today?" Michael kept his voice calm. "We're meeting the new nurse, the one from Ohio. She comes highly recommended. She knows everything about your therapy. She's kind." He had learned that the hard way, night after night, when Ethan had woken in pain and a nurse had whispered steady words that kept the world from splitting in two. The elevator opened into their private garage. A black SUV waited. A driver held the door. They rode down through the tower, into the morning rush. Sirens lined up somewhere in the distance, and a billboard flashed a watch ad with Michael's face on it. The city knew him as the CEO who saved failing companies. Ethan knew him as the dad who could never fix a broken night. At the hospital in Midtown, sunlight washed the glass like a fresh page. People moved with the quick rhythm of a weekday. The lobby smelled of sanitizer and coffee. Michael signed forms while Ethan watched a child tug a red balloon. Then she approached. Grace, a nurse in navy scrubs, hair tied back, a small silver cross at her collar. She rolled to a stop in front of Ethan and crouched to his level like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Hi, Ethan. I'm Grace," she said, not looking past him to the powerful man behind him. "I've heard all about your rocket backpack." Ethan's eyes lit. "It's fast. I can tell," she said with a grin. "You ready to show me how fast you can roll to the therapy room?" He looked to his father. Michael nodded, and something in him softened when he did. Grace's kindness was not showy. It was the calm kind, the kind that held when everything else slipped. As they moved through the hall, Michael noticed details he usually missed. A tired father in construction boots sleeping in a chair. A volunteer reading to a little girl with a bald head and a smile too big for the moment. The world outside was made of numbers and charts. In here, it was made of hearts, and hearts were fragile. The therapy room was bright with windows. Grace introduced Ethan to a set of exercises using bands and a low platform. "We go slow and steady," she said, "and we celebrate small wins." Michael stood by the wall, hands in his pockets, unable to push away the reflex to control every outcome. "How long until he's stronger?" he asked. Grace kept her eyes on Ethan's feet. "We measure progress by effort," she said. "Time is a partner, not a boss." He almost smiled. Most people told him what he wanted to hear. She gave him what he needed to hear. After an hour, Ethan's cheeks were pink. He was tired, but proud. Grace handed him water and patted his shoulder. "5 stars, she said. "Out of how many?" he teased. "Out of 5, she said. "You're a star student." They returned to the lobby. A poster on the wall announced a fundraiser gala for pediatric rehab. The hospital needed a new motion lab. The tagline read, "Small steps, big futures." Michael studied it for a beat. "You're on the planning committee?" he asked Grace. She shrugged. "Sort of. I help where I can." He thought of his network. He thought of the checks he had written that landed in stacks and moved mountains. "Send me the budget," he said. "I'll cover the shortfall." Grace blinked. "That's generous." "It's efficient," he said. "Consider it done." Ethan yawned, and the conversation ended there. As they reached the doors, a woman in plain clothes brushed past. "Grace?" she called, too loud for a hospital. Grace stiffened. The woman's eyes flicked to Michael, then to Ethan, then back to Grace. Something electric cracked in the air. Grace forced a smile. "Hi, Lena," she said, her voice thin. "I'll call you later." Lena bit her lip, took a step back, and left without another word. Ethan looked up at Grace. Michael looked at the nurse's hands. They shook for a moment, then steadied. In the SUV, Ethan fell asleep. Michael watched Grace through the rearview mirror's memory. The way her eyes had flickered when Lena spoke, the way she had recovered. He drew a slow breath. He had learned to trust actions more than words. Grace had moved with care and skill. That was what mattered. That evening, the mansion glowed like a magazine spread. The Hudson glittered outside the windows. Michael sat at the long dining table across from Ethan, who ate pasta with more sauce on his chin than his plate. They laughed. It was small and perfect. The doorbell chimed. A delivery. The driver carried in a crate of fresh flowers. A note slid out and fell onto the table. Ethan beat his father to it and read loud, too loud, in the echo of the marble hall. To Michael, your presence at the gala will be life-changing. Thank you. Grace. Michael tucked the note into his jacket with a simple nod. She's thoughtful, he said. Ethan chewed and said, she's kind. Later, when the house settled, Michael walked past the piano to Ethan's room. Stars glowed on the ceiling. The boy slept with his rocket backpack at the foot of the bed. Michael sat in the chair and watched the rise and fall of his son's breath. He felt it again, that mix of power and powerlessness. He could buy the best equipment. He could not buy the strength in those small legs. He could sign any deal. He could not sign away the fear that woke him at 3 in the morning. His phone buzzed. A message from Victor, an old friend and board member who spoke in numbers like a second language. Heard about the new nurse. Be careful. People talk. Michael stared at the screen. He put the phone face down. The next week moved with a new rhythm. Grace arrived each morning at 8. She greeted Ethan first, always, with a quiet joke or a new sticker for the wheelchair spoke. She greeted Michael next, brief but warm. They found a pattern: therapy sessions, homework, short walks in Central Park, where Ethan fed pigeons, and Grace explained how muscles learned like students, patiently, steadily. One afternoon, near the Bethesda fountain, Ethan worked on a new task, standing with a frame for 30 seconds. Grace counted down with him. 10, 9, 8. Michael watched, hands clenched. "Don't rush," he said. "We aren't," Grace replied, eyes on the boy. "We're learning." Ethan trembled, and then made it to 0. He let out a laugh that sounded like a bell. Strangers clapped without knowing why. Michael's throat tightened. He slid sunglasses on, though the day had gone overcast. They sat on a bench afterward. Ethan sipped juice, proud as a first-place winner. Grace checked notes on a clipboard. Michael forced himself to speak about something other than targets and outcomes. "You're from Ohio," he said. "Cleveland," she answered. "Big heart, little budget." "Family there," she hesitated. "A few people," he said lightly. "Complicated." "You left because of work?" "I came because New York is loud enough to drown out old noise," she said, with a small smile. "And because the best rehab work is here." He nodded. He knew how to leave places. He knew how to build new ones. But something in her tone had a catch he recognized: the sound of a door locked from the inside. At the hospital the following morning, Ethan asked, "Can we try the pool therapy today?" "If you're up for it," Grace said. "It builds strength without pressure." Michael signed the consent form. As he turned, he caught a glimpse of Lena at the far end of the hall. She spoke to a clerk, then noticed him and looked away. Her jaw was tight. He logged it without comment. He had survived mergers by paying attention to tiny things that meant big trouble. Pool therapy worked magic. Ethan laughed, the water taking part of his weight, his steps lighter. Grace guided him with firm, encouraging hands. When the session ended, she wrapped him in a towel. Ethan leaned his head against her shoulder. It was a small, unguarded moment, and Michael felt a trick of heat behind his eyes. Heart-touching, tear-jerking, soul-stirring. Words he would never use in a boardroom, but could not escape here. On the ride home, Ethan dozed again. Michael scrolled his phone and found a news mention of the gala. A quote from the hospital director praised a powerful, inspirational gift from an unnamed billionaire donor. He closed the article and looked at his son's face. The gift was nothing compared to this small sleep after real work. That night, rain came hard. The city blurred. Michael stood on his balcony and let the cold air bite his skin. The door opened behind him. He turned, expecting his house manager. Instead, Grace stood there, a little damp, a paper folder in her hands. "I shouldn't have come," she said. "But Ethan left his favorite book in my bag. He asked for it." Michael stepped aside. "Thank you. ... She set the book on the console table and shut the door. For a second, they were alone with the rain and the hum of the city. He noticed the way she held the folder tight, as if it were part of her. He noticed the faint tremor in her fingers. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I am," she said. "Just tired." "Sit," he said, gesturing to the sofa. "One cup of tea, then you can escape my loud house." She smiled, and for the first time, he saw the shadow behind it. Like a storm that has not broken yet. They sat with mugs warming their hands. They spoke about small things: Ethan's courage, the new motion lab, the way New York was rude but honest. Michael said almost to himself, "Kindness is rare in my world." Grace looked at him. "It isn't rare," she said softly. "It's just quiet. Easy to miss if you live where everything shouts." He held her gaze. Something inside him shifted. a quiet slide of stone. Life-changing, he thought, though the words surprised him. Then her phone buzzed. The sound cut the room in half. She glanced at the screen and went still. The color drained from her face. She stood without a word and moved to the hallway. He didn't follow. He heard only fragments. "I told you. No, please, not him. He's a child." When she returned, she had folded the fear back behind her eyes. "I should go," she said, voice steady but thin. He stood as well. "Is there something I should know?" The question came out more protective than polite. She shook her head. "It's fine. Grace, I promise," she said, too fast. "See you in the morning." The door closed, leaving silence behind. Michael stared at the place where she had stood. The rain softened to a hush. He picked up the paper folder she had carried in. It had been left on the console under the book. He knew he should not look. He knew privacy mattered. He also knew danger when it brushed his life. He opened the folder. Inside was a single page, a photocopy of a news story from 3 years ago. An Ohio paper, grainy and gray. The headline about a clinic error, a family's loss, and a nurse named Anna, not Grace. The article was circled in blue ink. In the margin, a phone number. And at the bottom, a handwritten note. "Pay what you owe, or we go public." Michael stared at the name until the letters blurred. He closed the folder with a slow, careful motion. Then looked down the hall toward Ethan's room, where nightlights glowed like small planets. In the quiet, a thought hit so hard he had to sit. The woman who had brought life back into his son's days might be hiding a past that could break them both. And somewhere in the dark of Manhattan, someone else knew it too. The next morning broke with steel gray skies over New York, a hint of storm in the air. Michael's penthouse gleamed as always, but he felt the weight of that folder like an iron chain in his pocket. He had tucked it away in his office safe the night before, yet its memory burned through every polished surface he passed. Grace was not just Grace, at least not entirely. Still, when the doorbell chimed at exactly 8, there she was. Bright smile, navy scrubs, hair tied back, carrying Ethan's favorite book under one arm. Ethan wheeled himself across the floor with excitement. "You brought it," he said. "Of course," Grace replied, crouching to hand it over. "Couldn't let a brave astronaut miss his mission, could I?" The boy hugged the book like treasure. Michael, standing a few feet away, studied her face. Calm, steady. But now he saw the cracks, the faint shadows beneath her eyes, the too quick glance toward her phone. "Therapy room's ready," she said, looking at Michael for the first time. He nodded. "Let's go." The hospital corridor buzzed with movement. Nurses rushed with charts, doctors with clipped strides. Grace guided Ethan through it all like a steady compass. In the therapy room, she adjusted straps and bands, encouraging him through stretches. "Push, Ethan, just a little more. You're stronger than yesterday." Ethan gritted his teeth, sweat on his forehead. "Stronger than yesterday," he echoed, and for a moment it seemed the whole room leaned into his determination. Michael leaned against the wall, watching. Even here, with machines humming and timers clicking, the boy's smile shone brighter than the Billionaire skyline outside. "You see," Grace said softly to Michael without looking at him, "he believes in himself again. That's bigger than any treatment I can give." Michael swallowed. Belief, a word he had long dismissed in favor of numbers, contracts, efficiency. Yet here it was, making his son stand taller, laugh louder. But the memory of that folder dug sharp into his mind. Belief, yes, but belief in what? In who? After therapy, Grace suggested a short walk in Central Park. The trees were alive with late spring green. Ethan rolled along the path, scattering pigeons, his laughter echoing against the fountain. Strangers smiled at him, then at Grace, then at Michael trailing behind. For a rare moment, it felt like family. Not the cold photographs in Michael's home, but the kind of warmth he'd once dreamed of giving his son. Then it happened. A man stepped out from the path ahead, unshaven, clothes rumpled, eyes sharp with recognition. He froze when he saw Grace, and she froze too. "Anna?" the man said, voice cutting across the park. Everyone froze. Ethan blinked up at Grace. Michael's chest tightened. Grace's lips parted, her voice barely carried. "You're mistaken." The man's eyes narrowed. "No, I never forget a face, not after what happened at the clinic." Michael stepped forward, instinctively placing himself between the stranger and his son. "You need to leave," he said, his voice the kind that closed billion-dollar deals. The man hesitated, gave Grace one last burning look, then muttered, "The truth always comes out." He disappeared down the path, swallowed by the crowd. Ethan tugged Grace's sleeve. "Why did he call you Anna?" Grace forced a smile. Some people confuse names. But Michael saw her hands trembling. That night, the mansion's dinner felt different. Ethan chattered about pigeons and park fountains, but Grace's silence lingered. Michael cut his steak, but barely tasted it. After Ethan went to bed, Michael found her standing by the grand piano, tracing a key as if testing sound. "Grace," he said, "or Anna." She stiffened. "Please don't." "I don't care about names," Michael said carefully, "but I care about truth, especially around my son." Her eyes shone with something raw, fear, regret, maybe both. "One day, I'll tell you," she whispered, "but not now, not like this." "Then when?" His voice pressed harder. "When it's too late? When he's caught in the fallout?" Grace looked at him with such pain that for a moment he faltered. Then she turned and left without another word, her footsteps soft against the marble floor. Michael stood there, fists clenched, a billionaire in a palace, yet feeling like a powerless man in the dark. The next morning, Ethan sat at the breakfast table, drawing rockets on napkins. "Dad, Grace is my best friend," he said. Michael looked up from his coffee. "She helps you." "Yes." "She believes in me," Ethan said simply. "When she says I can do it, I feel like I can." Michael pressed his lips together. The boy's faith was pure, untouched by the shadows of secrets. And it terrified him. 2 days later, envelopes arrived. The hospital fundraiser gala, formal black tie, society's finest, journalists, cameras. Michael's presence would be front-page news. At the hospital, Grace handed him his invitation. Her smile was polite, guarded. "It would mean a lot to Ethan if you came." Michael studied her. "And to you?" Her gaze held his for a long second. "Yes." That night, Michael stood in his office, the invitation heavy in his hand. He opened the safe, pulled out the folder, and read the article again. A medical error, a family devastated, a nurse named Anna at the center, a shadow threatening to swallow Grace whole. He thought of Ethan's laughter, of Grace's steady hands guiding him through water therapy, of the man in the park saying, "The truth always comes out." And he wondered how much longer he could keep believing in her. The gala arrived on a stormy evening. Chandeliers sparkled, violins hummed, and glasses clinked. Michael arrived with Ethan in his chair, dressed in a small black tuxedo, a bow tie slightly crooked. Cameras flashed. The billionaire CEO single dad and his son supporting children's health. Headlines wrote themselves. Grace greeted them at the entrance. She looked radiant, but nervous, her eyes darting like shadows, chased her even here, among gold and marble. The night was smooth until Ethan excused himself, wheeled toward the restroom. A few minutes later, a cry echoed down the hall. Michael bolted. Ethan lay slumped, pale, breath shallow. The CEO panicked. Somebody get a doctor. Grace was already on her knees, steady hands checking vitals, whispering to Ethan with calm force, "Stay with me, buddy. You're stronger than yesterday." A doctor rushed in. Staff scrambled. Guests murmured. Phones raised. Michael's heart hammered like a war drum. After long minutes, Ethan stabilized. But as they wheeled him out, Michael caught sight of a shadowy figure at the edge of the crowd. The same man from Central Park, watching, waiting. Michael turned back toward Grace. She met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw something worse than fear. He saw guilt. Later that night, with Ethan safe in the hospital bed, Michael stood outside the room while Grace sat inside, holding Ethan's hand. The boy slept peacefully, unaware of the storm around him. Michael's phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. It was a photo. Grace, in scrubs, standing in front of the Ohio clinic. The headline from the old article in the corner. Beneath it, just through the storm outside Manhattan raged harder than the one inside Michael's chest. He stood at the hospital window, staring at the skyline split by lightning. Behind him, monitors beeped steady as Ethan slept, his small body fragile under white sheets. Grace sat beside the bed, holding his hand like a lifeline. Michael's phone still burned with the message, "Truth comes next." He didn't delete it. He didn't respond. He only stared at Grace, her head bowed, her lips moving in silent words. A prayer, maybe, or a plea. The next morning, Michael's boardroom buzzed with whispers. Victor, his old friend and advisor, slid a newspaper across the table. Billionaire CEO attends gala with nurse companion. The headline dripped with insinuation. The article hinted at improper ties between Michael and a woman of troubled past. A grainy picture showed Grace at the gala entrance, eyes wide, as if she already sensed the wolves circling. "This can ruin us," Victor warned. "Shareholders hate scandal. You can't afford emotional distractions." Michael leaned back, jaw tight. "She's not a distraction." "She will be," Victor shot back. "The truth about her past, it's coming. People are digging." Michael's hands curled into fists. He was a man who had silenced rivals, crushed competitors. But this was different. Because here, the battlefield wasn't money. It was trust. And trust was already cracking. That evening, Grace asked for a moment alone. They sat in the dim light of the hospital's family lounge. Coffee cups cooled between them. "I know you've heard things," she began, "and I know you've seen something." Michael said nothing. He let the silence stretch. Her eyes glistened. "What happened years ago wasn't what they said. I was young, reckless. I made a mistake, but I wasn't guilty of the crime they put on me. A family lost their child, and I was blamed. I carried that weight every day. Changed my name, moved states, but I never stopped wanting to help children. Because," her voice cracked, "because maybe if I saved one, I could forgive myself." Michael leaned forward. "Then why hide? Why not tell me from the start?" Her lips trembled. "Because I knew you wouldn't trust me, and I couldn't bear losing Ethan's trust." The words tore through him. He wanted to believe. God, he wanted to. But his world was built on contracts, verifications, signatures. Not whispers and shadows. Before he could speak, his phone buzzed again. Another message. This time it wasn't a photo. It was a video. The Ohio clinic. Grace, Anna, arguing with a doctor. His words caught faintly. "You were responsible for the medication chart." Her protests followed. "No, it wasn't me." The clip ended abruptly, leaving only silence. Michael's blood ran cold. The next day, Ethan surprised them both. Despite weakness from the collapse, he begged for therapy. "Please, Dad, he said, eyes wide. Grace believes I can do it. I want to try. Michael hesitated, but the boy's determination was stronger than his fear. He agreed. Grace guided Ethan into the pool again, her voice steady despite the storm around her. One step at a time. You're stronger than yesterday. Ethan took shaky steps in the water. People gathered at the window. Nurses paused in the hall. And when he reached the edge, applause broke out. Michael's throat tightened. His son, the boy everyone had pitied, looked like a champion. But as cheers filled the hall, Michael noticed someone watching again. The same man from Central Park, leaning against a pillar, phone in hand, recording. Their eyes met. The man smirked, then vanished into the crowd. The following week turned brutal. Tabloids ran stories daily. CEO falls for fallen nurse. From billionaire boardrooms to hospital scandal. Shareholders called emergency meetings. Charity sponsors withdrew. Victor stormed into Michael's office. You need to cut her off. Fire her. Publicly distance yourself. Michael slammed his fist on the desk. She saved my son's life. She gave him hope. Victor's voice softened. And now she's taking yours. Michael dismissed him, but doubt gnawed deeper. Could kindness really outweigh the cost of empire? Late one night, Grace came to the mansion. She carried an old folder, worn edges, coffee stains. She placed it on Michael's desk. This is everything, she said, voice barely above a whisper. The reports, the statements, the truth. Michael opened it. Pages told a story of overworked shifts, missing signatures, a system failure. Grace's name appeared again and again, not as the villain, but as the scapegoat. Another nurse had disappeared after the tragedy. Evidence lost, accountability blurred. They needed someone to blame, she said, tears streaking her cheeks. And I was the easiest target, poor, young, no lawyer. I changed my name to escape the whispers, but I never stopped feeling guilty, even if it wasn't my fault. Michael stared at her. His heart ached at the rawness in her voice, but his mind, his logical, calculating mind, still screamed caution. Before he could answer, Ethan wheeled into the office, holding a drawing. 3 stick figures, him, Michael, and Grace. Underneath, in shaky letters, family. Michael's chest cracked open. He swallowed hard. But before warmth could settle, the front gates buzzed. Security called. A man insists he must speak with you. Says it's about Grace. Michael's heart sank. In the grand entry, the man from Central Park stood, rain dripping off his coat. You don't know who she really is, he sneered. But I do. Pay me, or the whole city will. Michael's voice turned ice. You're blackmailing me? Call it compensation. She ruined lives back then. Don't let her ruin yours. Before Michael could respond, Ethan's voice carried from the stairs. Dad, who is he? The man's eyes flicked to the boy, then to Grace, who had appeared behind Michael. For a moment, silence burned through the hall. Then the man smirked, stepping back. Tick-tock, CEO. The truth doesn't stay buried. He vanished into the rain, leaving the threat echoing like thunder. That night, Michael confronted Grace in the study. You should have told me everything, from the start. I tried, she cried, but I was terrified. Every time I wanted to, something stopped me. Your judgment, his innocence, the fear of losing what little I'd found here. Michael's voice cracked, louder than he meant. You put my son in danger by keeping secrets. Her tears fell freely. I saved him. I love him. And She stopped herself, biting her lip. Michael's chest tightened. He wanted to believe, but the empire he had built was collapsing under the weight of rumor. He turned away, unable to look at her. "Leave," he whispered. The word hung heavy, cruel even to his own ears. Grace's breath hitched. She walked out slowly, each step echoing finality. The door closed, and silence swallowed the mansion. Hours later, Ethan wheeled into Michael's room. His small voice broke the dark. "Dad, don't make her go." Michael rubbed his face, exhausted. "Son, she makes me feel strong," Ethan said, tears brimming. "Stronger than I ever did. Please don't take her away. She's all I have." The words gutted Michael. He pulled his son close, holding him as the boy sobbed. In that moment, he realized the war wasn't between truth and lies. It was between fear and love. The next morning, the mansion's gates rattled with noise. Reporters crowded outside, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Headlines screamed from screens. "Scandal Nurse Anna exposed. Billionaire CEO caught in cover-up." Michael stood at the balcony, Ethan beside him, pale but determined. Grace was nowhere in sight. A security guard rushed in, panic in his voice. "Sir, it's not just reporters. The authorities are here. They want to question her, and they won't wait." Michael's blood turned to ice. The storm had finally broken, and somewhere in the city, Grace was alone, walking straight into the fire of her past. The storm of flashbulbs outside Michael's mansion didn't die down for days. Reporters screamed questions, tabloids spun headlines, and whispers spread like wildfire. But inside, the silence was worse than any noise. Ethan barely spoke, rolling through the hallways with his sketchpad, drawing rockets crashing into dark clouds. Grace had vanished the morning the reporters arrived. No note, no goodbye, just absence, sharp and suffocating. In the sleek glass boardroom high above Manhattan, Michael faced his directors. Victor stood at the head of the table, voice heavy with judgment. "Our stock dropped 12% in 48 hours, Victor said. "Investors are nervous. They don't want a scandal tied to this company." Michael leaned forward, voice low. "My personal life has nothing to do with our performance." Victor's reply was ice. "It does when the entire country sees you as a billionaire CEO defending a disgraced nurse with blood on her hands." The room went silent. Even the hum of the city below seemed to pause. Michael felt the weight of their stares. He had always commanded loyalty through power, precision, and results. But now, his empire trembled because of one woman's hidden past. And yet, when he closed his eyes, he saw Ethan smiling in the pool, standing taller because of her. He opened them, steel hard. "You want me to cut her out? I won't. I don't abandon the people who save my son." Victor's expression tightened. "Then be ready to lose everything else." That night, Michael found her again. She was in the children's ward, not hiding, but working, reading to a little girl with tubes in her nose, her voice soft and steady. When she saw him, her face paled. "You shouldn't be here. The cameras." "I don't care about cameras," Michael said, his voice rough. "Why did you run?" "I didn't run," she whispered. "I stayed where I belong, with the children." He swallowed the ache rising in his throat. "Grace, Anna, whoever you are, you need to tell me the truth, all of it, right now." Her hands trembled on the book. "I already told you what I could." "That's not enough anymore," he pressed. "They're coming for you. And if you don't speak, you'll lose everything. Ethan will lose you." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "You don't understand. The truth isn't just about me. It's about someone else, someone powerful. And if I talk, they'll destroy you too." Before he could demand more, a voice cut in, cold, familiar. "Well, isn't this touching?" Michael turned. The man from the park stood in the doorway, smug, hands in his coat pockets. Grace froze. Michael stepped in front of her, jaw tight. "You again?" "Me again?" the man said with a sly grin. "Funny how billionaires think they can buy silence forever." Michael's fists clenched. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted," the man said casually. "Compensation. You pay me, and I keep my mouth shut about Anna here, about the child who died, about how she walked away free while others buried their son." Grace's voice broke. "That's not true. You know it isn't." The man sneered. "Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what people believe. And right now, they're ready to believe anything ugly about you, Mr. CEO." Michael stepped closer, voice like thunder. "You're lying. I know it, she knows it, and soon everyone else will too." The man laughed, a low, cruel sound. "You think money buys truth? No, it buys silence. But you," his grin widened, "you've already lost control." Before Michael could reply, a cry echoed down the hall. Ethan had wheeled himself closer, drawn by the voices. His face was pale, sweat beading at his brow. "Dad," his voice cracked, "I don't feel right." Everyone froze. Michael spun, panic surging. "Ethan!" The boy slumped forward, gasping. His small hands clawed for air. Nurses shouted, rushing forward. Alarms blared. The CEO panicked. He scooped Ethan into his arms, his billionaire strength useless against the fragility of his child. "Help him! Please, somebody help him!" Grace pushed past the nurses, her voice firm. "I've got him, trust me." She laid Ethan on a gurney, pressing her hands to his chest, whispering calm words even as doctors swarmed. Michael hovered, shaking, watching his world collapse. "Stay with me, buddy," Grace pleaded, tears streaming. "You're stronger than yesterday, stronger than ever." Minutes crawled like hours. Finally, Ethan's chest rose steady again. His eyes fluttered open. Michael sagged with relief, tears streaking his face. He looked at Grace, gratitude raw and consuming. But when he turned, the man was gone. Later that night, Michael sat in the hospital chapel, the weight of exhaustion crushing him. Grace joined him, silent at first, then handed him a flash drive. "What's this?" he asked. "The file they don't want you to see," she whispered. "Evidence that clears me. Records, statements, even a confession from the nurse who ran. I've had it for years. But if I released it, I'd be hunted forever, because it doesn't just expose me, it exposes the ones who covered it up, a billionaire hospital donor, a man your board worships." Michael stared at the drive, his pulse roaring. Victor. Grace's silence was answer enough. The next day, Michael confronted Victor in his penthouse office. "You knew," Michael said coldly. "You knew she was innocent. You let the world crucify her to protect your donor friends." Victor's face hardened. "I did what had to be done. The company couldn't survive scandal. And now, neither will you if you keep her." Michael's voice thundered. "You sacrificed a child's truth for profit." Victor stepped closer, eyes sharp. "And you'll sacrifice your empire for a nurse with a ruined name. Which of us is the fool?" Michael's blood boiled. "I'd rather lose every dollar than lose the only people who make this life worth living." Victor smirked. "Then you've already lost." That night, Michael returned to the hospital, flash drive still burning in his pocket. He found Grace in Ethan's room, gently brushing the boy's hair as he slept. "We can end this," Michael said, holding up the drive. "Clear your name. Expose them all." Grace's eyes widened with fear. "If you do, they'll destroy you. They'll destroy him." She glanced at Ethan. "Are you willing to risk your son's safety for the truth?" Michael's jaw tightened. He stared at Ethan, his world, his reason. Then at Grace, the woman who had saved his boy, but carried a past heavy enough to shatter everything. The decision was crushing, impossible. And before he could answer, his phone buzzed. Another message. This time, it wasn't words. It was a live stream link. He clicked. The man from the park appeared on screen, standing outside the hospital. Cameras crowded him, microphones thrust forward. And he spoke the words Michael feared most. Let me tell you the truth about the nurse who hides his grace and the billionaire CEO who protects her. The feed cut. Michael's heart stopped. The war for truth had gone public. The city did not sleep that night. News outlets replayed the live stream on a loop. A shadowy man exposing the nurse with a hidden identity and the billionaire CEO single dad who protects her. Pundits argued on television, hashtags trended, and the empire Michael had built began to fracture in real time. But in the quiet of Ethan's hospital room, none of that mattered. The boy slept, his breath shallow but steady, his small hand curled around his favorite toy rocket. Grace sat in a chair, pale and exhausted, staring at the floor. Michael paced like a caged animal, the flash drive still burning in his pocket. "Say something," Grace whispered. Her voice cracked, raw with guilt. Michael stopped pacing. "What do you want me to say? That I don't care what the world thinks? That none of this matters?" His voice shook with anger. "It matters, Grace. Not for me, for him." He pointed at Ethan. "He doesn't deserve to live with scandal tied to his name." Grace's eyes brimmed. "I never wanted this to touch him. I thought I could keep the past buried." Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice. "No past stays buried, especially not when wolves smell blood." Her tears fell. "Then let me leave. If I walk away, maybe they'll stop." Michael's jaw tightened. The thought of her walking out, leaving Ethan's days empty again, was unbearable. Yet every instinct, as a CEO, screamed to cut ties, protect the brand, the empire, the name. And then Ethan stirred, his voice fragile but clear. "Dad, don't let her go." Both adults froze. Michael knelt beside the bed. "You should be sleeping." "I heard you," Ethan whispered. "She makes me strong. Without her, I'm just the boy in the chair again." His eyes welled. "Please, Dad, don't let them take her away." Michael's chest cracked open. A tear slid down his face before he could stop it. He looked at Grace and saw not a liability, not a scandal, but the reason his son still smiled. The next morning, the hospital cafeteria buzzed with whispers. Reporters camped outside, cameras waiting to pounce. Michael walked in with Grace at his side, ignoring the stares. Victor waited at a corner table, his suit immaculate, his expression carved from stone. "You're finished," he said without preamble. "The board is voting tomorrow. You'll lose your chair, your company, everything." Michael sat opposite him, calm for the first time in days. "Maybe I will, but at least I won't lose my son's respect." Victor leaned in, voice like poison. "Do you even know what you're protecting? She's not worth it. One press of that flash drive and she drags you both into the fire." Michael pulled the flash drive from his pocket, holding it between them. "This doesn't burn me, Victor. It burns you, and your donors, and every man who buried the truth to protect his fortune." For the first time, Victor's mask cracked. A flicker of fear. Michael's voice dropped. "You silenced a tragedy. You sacrificed her to save your empire, but not anymore." Victor's fists clenched on the table. "If you do this, you'll regret it." Michael stood, pocketing the drive. "The only thing I'd regret is teaching my son that money is worth more than kindness." That evening, Michael called a press conference. The media swarmed the hospital atrium, lights blazing, cameras rolling. The city held its breath. He stepped up to the podium. Ethan in his wheelchair beside him, Grace just behind. For once, the billionaire CEO didn't wear his armor. His tie was gone, his face tired, his voice steady. "You've all heard rumors," he began. "You've all seen headlines. Yes, Grace was once known by another name. Yes, she was blamed for a tragedy. But what you haven't heard, what they tried to bury, is the truth." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Michael pulled the flash drive from his pocket, holding it up. This drive contains records, testimonies, proof that she was scapegoated to protect men with money and influence. Men who thought a young nurse was easier to destroy than to admit their own failures. His eyes burned into the cameras. "And one of those men is someone you've trusted in my own company." Reporters erupted with questions. Victor, watching from the back, went pale. Michael's voice rose. "I've been called a billionaire, a CEO, a man of power. But tonight, I stand here as something more important, a single dad. A father who saw his disabled son smile again because of this woman's kindness. A man who refuses to let lies win over truth." His voice broke for the first time. "Money can build towers, but kindness can rebuild a soul." The room fell silent. Cameras clicked. Hearts trembled. But before applause could rise, Victor stormed forward, flanked by two lawyers. "He's lying," Victor shouted. "This is slander. She's guilty, and he's protecting her because he's blinded by emotion." Chaos erupted. Reporters shouted. Security scrambled. Grace stepped back, trembling. Ethan clutched Michael's hand. Michael raised his voice above the din. "If I'm lying, then prove it. Let the world see the files. Let every parent who lost a child decide for themselves who betrayed them." Victor's face twisted. He lunged for the drive. "You don't know what you're doing!" Everyone froze. For a man who prided himself on control, Victor had slipped. The cameras caught every second. Michael pulled Ethan closer, his voice like thunder. "No, Victor. I finally know exactly what I'm doing." Security dragged Victor back as reporters swarmed. Questions flew like arrows. Grace stood frozen, tears streaming, unable to believe the man who had once doubted her was now burning his empire to save her. Michael turned to her, his voice soft now. "It's time to stop running." She shook her head. "If you do this, you'll lose everything." He met her eyes. "Not everything. Not him. Not you." Ethan tugged Grace's sleeve, whispering, "Family." The word shattered her. Just as Michael prepared to hand the drive to the reporters, a phone rang. A sharp, piercing sound that cut through the chaos. One of the lawyers answered, face draining of color. He handed the phone to Victor, who pressed it to his ear. "Yes," Victor hissed. Then his eyes widened. His knees buckled. He dropped the phone. His lips moved soundlessly before he whispered, "It wasn't supposed to come out. Not like this." Security grabbed him again, but the damage was done. Reporters surged forward, microphones raised. The room exploded in questions. And in the middle of it all, Michael stood still, drive in hand, son at his side, Grace trembling beside him. The world was about to know everything, but whether it would save them or destroy them was still uncertain. The hospital atrium remained a battlefield long after Victor was dragged away. Reporters demanded answers, cameras chased every angle, and security struggled to restore order. But for Michael, the noise blurred. The only clear thing in his mind was Ethan's small hand gripping his, and Grace's tearful eyes shining with both fear and hope. That night, the flash drive was delivered to investigators. Within days, the contents tore across the media like wildfire. Records of altered charts, testimonies from doctors who had been silenced, an unsigned confession pointing directly at the nurse who had vanished years ago, the one who had truly abandoned her post. And through it all, one truth rang clear. Grace, once Anna, had been framed. 2 weeks later, the hospital chapel overflowed with people. Patients, parents, nurses, reporters, even board members who once whispered against her. A small podium stood at the front. Michael sat in the front row with Ethan, his boy dressed in a neat blazer, smiling nervously. The lead investigator stepped up. After reviewing the files, after hearing testimony long buried, after uncovering corruption from those who valued money over truth, the judgment is clear. Grace Walker, once accused, once condemned in whispers, is innocent. She never caused the tragedy. She was a victim of a cover-up. The true culprits have been named, and justice will follow. Gasps echoed through the hall. Grace covered her mouth with trembling hands. Ethan clapped loudly, not caring about solemnity, his voice echoing, "I knew she was good! I knew it!" Michael's throat tightened. He pulled his son close, holding him as tears blurred his vision. Around them, strangers wiped their eyes. The weight of injustice finally lifted. Michael's prediction had come true. His empire did collapse. The board ousted him as CEO. The stock tumbled. Headlines branded him reckless. The life of luxury and power he had once controlled slipped from his grasp. And yet, as he stood outside the hospital that day, watching Ethan roll forward on his chair, with Grace pushing gently behind, he realized he had not lost at all, because what he had gained was something no empire could buy. Ethan's laughter rang like a bell. Grace leaned close to whisper encouragement. For the first time in years, Michael felt the kind of wealth that could never vanish. Love, trust, family. That evening, they returned to the mansion, not for grandeur, but for closure. In the grand living room, the white piano still sat silent. Michael ran his hand across it, then turned to his son. "Do you want to learn?" he asked. Ethan hesitated, then nodded eagerly. Grace sat beside him on the bench, guiding his hands to the keys. The first notes were clumsy, halting, but filled with joy. Michael stood behind them, watching. His empire had been towers of glass and steel. His new empire was here, in this sound, in this warmth. On the wall above, where empty frames once leaned, Michael had finally hung a picture. Ethan's drawing of 3 stick figures under the word family. It was crude. It was perfect. Spring returned to New York. The city buzzed as always, but life in Michael's world had slowed. He no longer commanded boardrooms or balanced billion-dollar deals. Instead, he walked Ethan to therapy sessions, cooked breakfast in a sunlit kitchen, and found joy in small, ordinary things. Grace still worked at the hospital, her name now cleared, her reputation restored. But she returned each evening to a home filled with laughter, not whispers. Ethan had grown stronger. With braces on his legs and fierce determination in his heart, he took slow, steady steps across the living room. Grace counted each one. Michael clapped like it was the stock market soaring. On the last step, Ethan looked up and said, "See, Dad? Stronger than yesterday." Michael's eyes filled, his heart breaking and mending all at once. "Yes, son," he whispered, "stronger than yesterday." One quiet evening, they gathered on the balcony overlooking the Hudson. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. Ethan leaned against Grace, rocket backpack beside him. Michael stood with a glass of water in hand, no longer the symbol of power the city once feared, but simply a man at peace. Grace turned to him, eyes soft. "Do you regret it? Giving up everything for me? For us?" Michael shook his head. "I didn't give up everything. I gained what matters. My son's smile, your kindness. A life that's real. Ethan lifted his drawing again, the same one with stick figures, now framed properly. He held it out proudly. This is forever. Michael wrapped an arm around them both, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, this is forever. The camera of the world had once shown him as a billionaire, a CEO, a scandal. But the truth, the only truth that mattered, was right here. A single dad, his son, and the woman whose past had once shattered his heart, but ultimately rebuilt it stronger than ever. And as the night settled, one final line whispered like a promise. Kindness doesn't erase the past, but it can build a future. This was another soul-stirring journey with echoes of hope. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because every story we tell carries the power of kindness, love, and transformation.